Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott, as always. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on is today we are talking all about A Real Pain. This is our first pseudo foray into the Hulu side of things on the Disney Plus app. Looking at, I picked this, or I threw this out there as a recommendation because this is something that I had been interested in checking out last year. I'd heard good things about it, like coming out of Sundance, and then it just finally got like a late year release. But with all the other stuff going on at the end of the year, I just didn't make it out to go see it in theaters. And I was like, it'll come to streaming eventually. And hey, it came to Hulu, so that falls into the bucket of things we can chat about. Originally released November 1st, 2024. Other releases of the time, back at the end of September 27th, you had the triple threat of The Wild Robot, Saturday Night, and Megalopolis. October 4th followed up with Joker Folie à Deux. October 11th was Terrifier 3. October 18th was a triple threat of Smile 2, Anora, and Woman of the Hour. October 25th was Venom: The Last Dance. Then here on November 1st, we had A Real Pain alongside the Clint Eastwood film Juror Number 2, which I believe has been getting some buzz for Nicholas Holt's performance in that, as well as here, the Robert Zemeckis film with Robin Wright and Tom Hanks that just bombed. November 8th was Heretic, which is that Hugh Grant horror film, psychological thriller thing. Then on November 13th, we had Hot Frosty, out in the Netflix verse, I believe. November 15th, Red One, one of Logan's movies of the year. November 12th, obviously, brought us the Wicked and Gladiator 2 doubleheader. And November 27th gave us Moana 2. Box office history. As of last night when I was pulling these numbers together, the movie has brought in 8.1 million domestic and 14.3 million worldwide. As to be expected for a more art house film. But I'm curious, Cam, if you can guess where that falls in the top domestic and worldwide charts for last year. For 8.1 million domestic, where do you think that falls? I'll give you a higher or lower.
8 million? Did 50 movies come out last year?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say 56.
56 was Kraven the Hunter with 24.7 million. So a little lower than, or higher in number than Kraven.
All right, 75?
75 was Maxine from A24 at 15.0 million.
Dang, okay. 95.
95, Love Lies Bleeding, also from A24, 7.8 million. So,
okay,
little better
we're
than
working
Love Lies
here, working
Bleeding.
through it. 90.
90, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim.
Oh, no.
9.1 million. It was animated. I didn't expect that to do well.
Not that bad, though.
So we're between 90 and 95.
93.
93, Spy Cross Family Code White, a Crunchyroll thing. 8.11 million versus A Real Pain's 8.14
So 94
million.
is
92.
92, sorry.
Yeah, one up. Spy Cross Family Code just below A Real Pain in the numbers. Real Pain 92 on the domestic charts.
Yeah, that Spy Family one was like a Fathom release thing, so it was like for a weekend or two.
Yeah, probably. That's anytime I see Crunchyroll in these things, I'm like, oh, that was like a 1 or 2 weekend deal.
Yeah.
Special of like, hey, we've released these 3 anime episodes as a movie event to celebrate the upcoming season or something.
Usually it's like that. This one in particular, though, is like an original movie that they put out, but that's fine. Spy Family is how it's pronounced and is actually very, very good. Good anime.
Cool. 92 on the 2024 domestic chart. At 14.3 million worldwide. Where do you think that falls on the worldwide chart?
On the worldwide chart? I mean, once again, we're talking pretty high up there, but we also have to get the international market in there. So how many, what 20 Chinese films are jumbling up in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and say, keep it high. I'm going to go 87.
87 is High Forces, which I believe is probably one of those Chinese films, given the characters on the numbers next to it. 41.5 million. So yeah, we're well below where this one is at 14.3 million.
Okay, so we're talking. I'm going to go ahead and say 112.
112 is Reagan at 29.4 million.
Okay, we're pump that number up. Okay, 136.
136. You've landed on it again. The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim at 20.4 million.
Oh man, so we're way up there on this one. 165th.
165th. That's the closest yet. That was Better Man at 13.3 million. So we are between 165 and 136.
150.
150 was Kinds of Kindness at 16.3 million.
Okay, a little bit higher than that. 55.
155 was Here, the aforementioned Robert Zemeckis film at 14.7 million. So a little bit higher than Here still.
58.
58 is The Victims. I believe that's going to be another Chinese at 14.4 million.
Oh, okay.
We're
so
14.4 versus 14.3 million now.
60?
160 is, yes,
160.
A Real Pain. 14.397 million on the worldwide chart. Number 160.
How much did this cost to make, though? Because it couldn't have been that expensive.
Probably not. Yeah, let me see if they have that listed here. The numbers, full financials, nothing there. Box office, I don't know if they have like cost here. Yeah, it doesn't look like they have cost listed. That might be like I would need IMDb Plus, or something like that.
Okay.
Or like IMDb Pro or whatever to see what the studio pumped into that.
I wonder if...
Unless I did see something, I think, about like Searchlight paid like $10 million for distribution rights, but
okay.
They probably also got some of that back in like streaming and stuff like
that. The budget for the film currently was $3 million.
Okay. So
$3 million, they made $7 million off of it. And then Searchlight paid $10 million, and then from there it made 14.31 worldwide domestic. So, like when we're talking about like a small film like this, that's pretty decent. Like,
and it's definitely like, again, it's been all over the award conversation stuff.
Yeah.
Kieran Culkin's been cleaning up some stuff, so I'm sure it did well. One of the interesting things, I don't know if you caught it in the credits. Emma Stone, one of the producers,
yes,
on this
I did.
film, through her Fruit something studio. I forget who it was. That was the producer.
But Emma Stone was one of the producers, which doesn't...
Fruit Tree.
Yeah, Fruit Tree. Which doesn't surprise me because she's known as being a good friend with Jesse Eisenberg.
I believe she also helped produce his last movie, which was his directorial debut.
Yeah. I will say, like, directorial-wise, like, we'll get into it a little bit more, but he is, like, there is some fascinating shots he does. Mm-hmm. That is just, like, that's very, like, it's very... There's just a whole lot about this movie, and it's like it's put together in its construction, its editing. That's like, this is a very interesting choice to make for this film.
We will talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. So runtime of nice 1 hour 30 minutes, nice quick in and out. Oof. Love these. We don't get nearly enough of these kinds of movies. In the Searchlight Films timeline, aka formerly Fox Searchlight. But obviously they removed the Fox branding after the Disney acquisition. We had Kinds of Kindness was released back in June 21st, 2024, followed by The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat in August 2024. Then Hold Your Breath, October 3rd, 2024. A Real Pain, November 1st, 2024. Followed up by Night Bitch, December 6th, 2024. And A Complete Unknown, December 25th, 2024. Another awards contention, buzzy kind of film there. And our roll call here. Director, Jesse Eisenberg, who prior to this, as a director, did When You Finish Saving the World a couple years ago. You also, and then now A Real Pain being his kind of sophomore directorial debut, or directorial effort. Same as the writer. He also wrote both of those films, Jesse Eisenberg, When You Finish Saving the World and A Real Pain. Our cast of characters, starring Kieran Culkin as Benji. Been working all the way back since them Home Alone films. as Kevin McAllister's cousin. Then he was later on in a film I remember seeing at the small little one theater, one screen theater on Mill Avenue, The Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys, probably back when I was in college. Then Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and obviously in recent years, Succession. You mentioned, I think last time we talked off mic, you were like, I really liked him in Saved. He was not in Saved. That was Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin was in Saved? I thought, oh, dang. Okay,
yep.
Dang, Skippy. I was wrong.
Yep.
What movie? Oh, it's movie 46 is the movie I was thinking of.
Oh, movie 43?
43, yeah. The one where, because he and Emma Stone?
I believe so, yeah.
Emma Stone have they're like something at a supermarket.
Yeah, movie 43 is like an anthology, weird, whole bunch of short films kind of all stitched together, I think.
Yep. And most of them terrible.
Yeah.
Awful. Some of them, though, fun concept, not executed greatly, but fun concept. Yeah. Hugh, if you ever want to see Hugh Jackman with testicles for a chin, there you go. That's a movie for you.
There you go. Jesse Eisenberg plays David here, in addition to the writing and directing duty. Of course, his early stuff was stuff like Adventureland and Zombieland, and then he really broke out with The Social Network.
Yeah.
He was in the Rio films, the animated films, the Now You See Me films, and then, of course, Lex Luthor in the Snyderverse and Batman v Superman and Justice League. Will Sharp plays James, the tour guide director kind of thing. Having been previously in shows like Flowers, Giri Haji, Landscapers, and White Lotus, which he received an Emmy nomination for. We have Jennifer Grey there as Marcia, of course, having a late career resurgence after really having her heyday back in the Ferris Bueller's Day Off and a Dirty Dancing 1-2 punch. Kurt Edjiawan as Eloge. Started his first thing was in Skyfall, so shout out Logan. He was Q's assistant in Skyfall. And then recently he was in 20 episodes. More recently, he was in the 20 episodes of the Exorcist series, as well as lately he can be seen in House of the Dragon. So I imagine you probably recognized him more so than I did.
Yep.
Daniel Oresquez as Mark. Miscellaneous credits back to 1993, including the Thomas Crown Affair, 13 episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog,
nice.
Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, and various Law and Orders. And then most recently, he was in a number of episodes of Only Murders in the Building. And lastly, Liza Sadovi, or Liza Sadovi as Diane, also having miscellaneous credits back to 1982, including a few episodes of Growing Pains. She's in the Johnny Depp Sweeney Todd movie. She did a couple episodes of Sarah Jane Adventures, and she played additional voices in the It Takes Two game a few years back. Game Awards winner, It Takes Two. Some trivia here on the awards front. The film was nominated for 5 Golden Globes, nominated for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, nominated for and won Best Supporting Actor in Kieran Culkin's performance. Then Jesse Eisenberg was nominated for Best Performance by Male Actor in Musical or Comedy, and Jesse Eisenberg was also nominated for Best Screenplay Motion Picture for the Golden Globes. And then, because the Academy Awards were announced the nominees were announced just this morning, I can throw in here that Kieran Culkin, once again nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which is wild to me now, having watched it and thinking that's not at all the supporting actor role in this film.
It's not.
he is full-blown the lead. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, stupid Academy Award categorization and campaigning nonsense. But he's very much the front runner, so if that's how you do it, that's how you do it, I guess. And then Jesse Eisenberg was also nominated for Best Original Screenplay for the film. A little bit of additional trivia here. The piano pieces heard throughout the film are the works of Frédéric Chopin, a Polish composer and piano virtuoso, regarded as one of the greatest musicians in history. The movie also sees the cousins leaving Poland via the Chopin airport at the end of the film. David's son Abe is played by Jesse Eisenberg's actual son Banner Eisenberg. In his theatrical film debut. The characters in the film visit the German concentration camp Majdanek near Lublin, or Lublin. Between 1941 and 1944, the Germans murdered about 80,000 people there, 59,000 of whom were Jews. The remaining victims were Poles, mainly members of the intelligentsia and the resistance movement. About 6% of the victims were children under the age of 15. So, once again, reminder, fuck Nazis in every form they take.
Whether it was then, now, forever.
Yeah.
Fuck Nazis.
At one point, Benji asks David if he remembers the Bushwhackers while doing an exaggerated strut down the street.
Yep.
Referring, of course, to the professional wrestling tag team from the 90s. I caught that and I was like, there you go, Kieran Culkin.
Yep, 100%.
I know you're a big WWE fan, so finding it here in the IMDb trivia gave me a chuckle. In real life, Kieran Culkin is a huge fan of WWE and has attended many live events throughout his life. And then I put in parentheses, including the recent January 6th Netflix WWE Raw view, the night after he won the Golden Globe for this film.
Yep.
So yeah, he had a fun little. I don't know, since I don't have Netflix and I didn't watch the debut. I don't know if it was on the show itself or it was just like a behind the scenes or like kind of like social clip they pulled out. But after the Seth Rollins CM Punk match, CM Punk like went down, saw Kieran Culkin at ringside and was like, "Didn't you just win an award?" And he's like, "Yeah, Golden Globe last night."
Yep.
And so it was a fun little moment between Kieran Culkin and CM Punk. Whereas also Macaulay Culkin had his big like pulling up his brim and getting one of the loudest pops of the night because he is also a longtime WWE fan.
Go figure.
Yep. When Benji and David visit their grandmother's home in Poland, the location is actually where Jesse Eisenberg's real-life ancestors settled in diaspora.
Oh.
And then one other little trivia note. Obviously, the duo here playing a pair of Jewish cousins. Kieran Culkin, not actually Jewish.
Yep.
So for whatever that's worth. The last little bit of trivia, though, I have is in a 2024 interview on the Roger Ebert website, Jesse Eisenberg spoke about the meaning of a key scene toward the end of the film. Quote, "The characters try to memorialize their grandmother by putting a stone on the stoop of the house that she lived in 85 years ago and are told there's an old woman who lives there now that she might trip over the stone and so they have to take it away. I was trying to present a dramatic irony in terms of how we try to hold on to the past in ways that are just not practical for modern life. It's trying to show that time moves on, irrespective of our strong, flailing attempts to hold on to it. You have to live in the present as much as you're trying to grasp onto the past. These characters are trying to connect to the past, but oftentimes it's literally impossible." So yeah, that's trivia pulled for this film. What did you think of A Real Pain, Cameron?
Deserves all the award and credit that it's getting. I think you kind of hit nail on the head. Kieran Culkin really is like pulling off a tour de force. But then there are moments where David is like getting a moment where it's very clear, and as somebody who suffers from, mental illness, who takes a lot of medication, it's really easy, especially when you're depressed, to consistently like focus on your medication and convince yourself that you're okay. Last year when I was dealing with like the last 8 months of my job where I was dealing with like really hard burnout that just progressively got worse. I kept focusing, well, no, I'm good. Like my medication, I'm doing fine. I can handle it. If I need to do, I need to take what I need to. And it was ignoring the underlying pain and problems that I was dealing with that I didn't deal with. And it eventually came to a point where I lost my job because of how bad things got. It was a very difficult time. You were there for all of it. And so as somebody who so this is the thing too, it's like very weirdly holding up a mirror to myself here in this film in a really big way.
I had a lot of thoughts of throughout watching this. I was like, there are a lot of Trevor and Cameron coded moments in this film. Yeah.
Yep.
I am very much the David of our relationship, I think.
I also saw that.
Like, you have like these high highs and low lows, and I'm just like, I don't know how to respond to you in this moment. I don't know how to help you in this moment.
Yep.
I can't.
I felt us both being seen in this movie. When he shows up, he goes, "Oh, when did you get here? Oh, I've been here for hours. But our flight doesn't leave for an hour. Oh yeah, but they open up early. You can just hang out. You meet the most interesting people." I'm like, when that happened, I was like, I swear that has been a conversation you and I have had at some point.
Yeah.
Somewhere on something. Most likely in an airport. Because
I mean, you basically go stay at the airport rather than get a hotel room for a night or something like that. Yeah, you have literally done that.
I've done that multiple times.
The implication here seems to be that he is unhoused and going through way harder times, since we see him kind of end at the same kind of spot at the airport, basically not leaving, not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, there's a lot also to that ending that I'm just like, that's like a feeling of like that like it's an interesting way to like place to end this film.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting place to end the film in that, but I think it also speaks to what you said. That was Jesse Eisenberg who you were quoting, right?
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg talking about the film.
Very much to that same theme is that they both end up where they started at the beginning of this movie. David ends up back at home. Benji ends up back at like the airport just hanging out. They both go back to their exact same places they were at the beginning of this movie.
I had to, I went back and like rewatched the opening of the movie after finishing it, because I was like, did they do a thing where like, oh, we were actually seeing this scene at the end of the film back at the beginning of the film? And no, it is different scenes. Yeah. But like there are interesting parallels. Like there's a pair of like Hasidic Jews behind him in both scenes. Like they're in the I think in the opening scene they're like a couple rows back, but in the last scene they're like one row behind him. So that was like, I was like, that looks familiar. Did they do a moment where they like they teased us with like, oh no, the thing they were showing us was him at the end of this journey? And no, but yeah, I
found that interesting. I thought I didn't make that connection that you did, and it turns out it wasn't the thing. But for me, it was those Hasidic Jews got closer. It's like he's closer to his culture than he was before he started his journey.
Yeah.
He might be in the same location, but the journey he took is still with him.
Yeah.
And what happened on that journey is still with him. That's what I kind of interpreted out of that. Yeah. This movie is filled with like a really great, like a lot of symbology and a lot of like, just like there's themes going on here that are deeper than the story. It's just about two cousins going to see where their grandma's from. And the fact that, yeah, I expected to be like a standalone house, like maybe like, oh, who's living there now? And it's like, no, it's just an apartment not even on the main street, just kind of like backed up in a corner across from like a giant garbage bin that is there. It's like very much like the reality of like, oh yeah, no, she left.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, was just, it's life.
Yeah. There was like, yeah, I found such an interesting parallel in that final moment of the film of them kind of being, or not final moment of the film, but them being there in front of the house. This interesting parallel of Benji's outburst earlier in the cemetery of like, we're doing this whole thing, but we haven't talked to a single like Polish person. Like we haven't engaged with anything of this culture, and them just doing that exact same thing there. Like they didn't knock on the door and be like, hi, so sorry to bother you. Our grandmother used to live here and we just, we're here. It like they are even there doing a touristy thing, which, obviously he'd been railing against earlier in the film so much of they're there to look and see the thing, but not actually engage with it in a meaningful way. Or when they try to engage with it in a meaningful way, they're not thinking about the logistics and the realities of like, yeah, this isn't a grave, for somebody else. Somebody does live there, and if you leave stones right there in front of the ground, somebody's going to potentially trip over that.
I also look at that, I'm thinking I thought to myself, I was like, is this like a very subtle thing from Jesse Eisenberg, who has not like, he's notoriously extremely private about like his like viewpoints and stuff like that. For what I understand, I might be wrong on that. I don't know Jesse Eisenberg's like past detailed intimately. The man did Now You See Me Too, and I was just like, dude, I don't know what's going on in your career or life, man, but okay, cool. People like those movies. I don't like them.
Those movies did gangbuster money for
me. Oh, I know they did, but for me, I just don't like them.
Yeah.
I think they're convoluted and don't make sense.
They're heist movies, but with magic. It's with sleight of hand.
Okay.
I see like TikTok style reels of those movies rather frequently, of like the sequences of them slipping through, and
that's
like
crazy. I never see them.
Like a shot of they slip through, grab somebody's security, sleight of hand it, move it over to somebody else, kick off the shoe, and like change the shoe. Like, yeah, just weird little like, here's an interesting cinematic shot or something like that. It's like this is from a Now You See Me movie. All right, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, no, but like that also spoke to me. I was like, because one of the reasons I didn't want to go see this movie initially is I was like, I feel awkward seeing a movie. Like, I get what they're going for. It's two Jewish men going on a heritage trip, basically. And part of me was like, this is also like when the war in Gaza, like the conflict in Gaza is getting to like really bad points. Famine is going on. Like, it's December. Famine is coming to Gaza. It's going to be really, really bad. And so like, that's where like my mind and heart has been since the invasion. And so for me on that end of things, it has been, I was like, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable like with that. Seeing that ending, I'm like, I don't know if it's commentary on like this, like you went back here and maybe there was significance to your grandmother, but like it's somebody's home. I don't know if it's meant to be a commentary on that, but I can see as somebody who, does media analysis for fun, I look at that and I see a parallel to a commentary on the settlements in Palestinian territory, of the reason like, oh well, our ancestors came from here, and it's like, okay, but you like that's somebody's home though. You don't leave like here. They left rocks there, and like an old lady could trip over it, and that's why the neighbor was like, hey, what are you guys like? Stop being weird. Like leave the like that's an old lady. She could trip over it, and not like ethnic displacement, like two very, very different things. And so if that was not Jesse Eisenberg intent, I can understand that, but he seems very smart. I don't know how, when he's writing this during like the conflict that's happening, like they're making this movie during the conflict and everything that's happening, if that's ever something that would ever have, come into play there. But that was something I did notice and picked up on. And I'm like, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but to me, as somebody who's very sensitive to this issue, is like that could be my sensitivity, picking up on things and kind of turning and like putting that spin on it. But I haven't heard or seen anybody make any sort of commentary about that. So.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't like link those ideas. I was certainly fascinated by the inclusion of the Eloge character as like a Rwandan refugee,
that was awesome.
Who basically found faith in the Jewish culture and community
in Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg, yeah. I thought that was a fascinating thing as like a sense of like history repeating itself, and the ways that it's so easy for people to have overlooked. Hey, yeah, the Holocaust happened, but like it wasn't the last terrible genocide.
Yeah.
There are more recent examples, and so maybe like if anything, I thought about the Gaza stuff a little bit more in relation to his arc
That's fair.
Than anything else.
Yeah, because being a refugee from Rwanda after the genocide there, and like it speaks to the parallels. Like history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. You have like these things happening, and yeah, like one of the things too. It's like somebody mentioned, I was on Reddit or something, and somebody like bashed like Rwanda as a country, as like a backwards place, and somebody who's from Rwanda said, "Hey, no, we're not. Like there's some stuff that we like I think are still problems in our country and culture." But we're not backwards, and like shared a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, wow, okay. Rwanda is like, no, like totally not what I didn't imagine Rwanda at all, which is part of the problem when it comes to like African culture erasure, especially as like a white guy, in America. So never even like thinking, what does Rwanda look like? My only like record of like understanding came from a movie that came out, years ago. It's like, what does Rwanda look like today? And it's like, the cities there are beautiful. It has a thriving culture. It's a very cool country, but like it has a dark history. Now, granted, we're saying this as Americans who you want to look at, man, how did the Germans even come up with the concentration camps? And it's like, well, the people have two thumbs and they sure like to say three letters a lot. You look at it, their study of like the Jim Crow South, Native American internments, Native American reservations, the like actions that America took to essentially like disestablish unestablished, destroyed anyway, the Native American nations that existed here. So, we are living in the biggest of glass houses when it comes to like making commentary or critiquing people's history. But yeah, I thought the character Eloge, right?
Yeah.
Eloge was such a fascinating character to have there, because when he talked about like what he found out of Judaic religion, and then to see two young, not religious Jewish kids, adults, kind of like, especially David, kind of come to understand. He goes, yeah, it's like felt archaic, mechanical, all this stuff, and being told, I think Shabbat alone would do you a lot of good, man. And it's like, and even David says later on, he goes, I meditate, I like run, I do these things, and it's like, okay, yeah, man, like Eloge was onto something. I do love how Benji just connects with people, though.
Mm-hmm.
And when David later says, like I don't know how you don't see what you do when you walk into a room, and the way that you light up a room when you walk into it. Like we see that consistently. Oh, Benji, he's this asshole at dinner, terrible to everybody. Like he's drunk and he's like, on a low point, walks away, kind of like, probably threw water on his face, like got like.
Well, I didn't even see it as drunk so much as he was having an episode. We see him multiple times throughout the film having these episodes. So like, yeah,
I guess 2 beers wouldn't make him drunk.
He had a beer or two. Yeah. I didn't take it as a drunk,
I didn't mean like sloshy drunk. I just meant like he had some alcohol. He had imbibed in some stuff. And so he was probably looser with his tongue than he normally would be. That aside, he goes and starts playing the piano and lights up the room. And you see how that hurts David. And we think, oh, is David jealous? And then at the very end, it's like, no, David's hurting because what he says, like, I don't know how you can take your own life when that's the case. Like, I would kill to be able to do what you do. And it's very cathartic for Benji in that moment, because he sees David as having this life together. His life is together. He's married, has a kid, has this job that's like a professional adult job.
Selling ads. That was another moment I was like, oh, well, there's the Cam bit on that character.
Yep. When he talks about like, taking a pill because I have to. It's like, yep, that's yep. Mm-hmm. I'm like, the parallels between me and these two characters seem to be endless. Mm. And like Kieran Culkin, I also am not Jewish.
I guess realistically, if I'm anybody in this, I'm probably James, the tour guide.
Dude, James is such an underrated character throughout this movie. And then at the very end, it's like, first off, Benji not remembering that he gave that rant in the cemetery. It's like, oh, come on, Benji.
Which, again, that's why I chalk up like the dinner thing as more
an episode.
He goes through these kind of manic breaks where he completely drops his filter, and a minute later he's fine and doesn't really engage that what he did probably just pissed somebody off or whatever. Because
it reminds me of somebody who's untreated for obsessive compulsive disorder, or like it reminds me a lot of my behavior when I am off my medication for a reason.
Sure.
If there's like a shortage, like I've been in the case where there's a shortage, or like something's wrong with my prescription and I'm not getting it, and so when I'm off that medication for a couple of days, these highs and lows get very drastic, and these manic episodes that happen are his anxiety's peaked and it's tilted something in his obsessive compulsive disorder, and he's freaking out. The fact that they're cousins and that this is another thing too, as somebody who knows a lot about mental disorders, particularly my mental disorder, I'm just going to say it. I'm not dancing around it anymore. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't usually talk about it in detail, but this movie is at the forefront. I see so much obsessive compulsive disorder. It's similar to like Inside Out 2 with like the best version of like defined anxiety I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. This is probably the best showcase of obsessive compulsive behavior I've ever seen. When I told you that I was obsessive compulsive, you felt that was weird initially because I didn't have a lot of the classic characteristics of like, in my mind, when people think classic characteristics, they think monk, they think germaphobe, they think that. And it's not that. To get back on track, though, not like let's talk less about me in this moment, as I want to drastically run away from talking any more about something that I'm not really publicly talked about a lot. I think Josh is his name. Josh Jones.
Who?
The tour guide.
James.
James, thank you. James is such an underrated character Because he is a tour guide. He's giving you facts. He's telling you this is the oldest grave in Poland. Like these are interesting facts that he knows people will enjoy. And when it comes to partaking of the tourist, you got a British person to be your guide.
Yeah, he's a Gentile. He's detached. He's a British Gentile giving a Polish Holocaust tour. He is detached and he is here to be a tour guide. And so
he is a true historian, by the way, too. By that front, I'm not part of this history, so I can objectively tell you about it.
Yeah, I can give you the facts and figures as we understand them, as culturally have been assessed. And I love the moments that he kind of pushes back of you signed up for a tourist. That's what I do. That's what this is. But then I also appreciated him taking the feedback and being I always ask people at the end of the tour to let me know if there's anything I could have done to make this a better experience for you. And you're the first that's given me actionable, feedback that I can kind of take into, making a better tour in the future. Let me go talk to some Polish people. Let me try and find Polish people who can partake in, parts of this journey or this experience kind of thing. And yeah, the fact that Benji didn't remember any of that at all. He's like, wait, what? I said that? What? That's crazy. It's oh man, you are broken in a very unhealthy way, and it just adds to the heartbreak of the character.
It does. I think that there is so much about these two cousins that they reflect so much of a childhood that is has complexity to it and has character to it. This is one of the things that I think this movie does extremely well is there's a history to these characters. Some characters feel a little bit less fleshed out than others, but in their own way, they're able to, especially with the actors who are portraying these characters, they're able to give substance to it through the moments that they have in scenes. You have the old couple who you can tell Marcus is the husband, I believe, and he's very standoffish and very back to it. But when Benji does his thing at the Uprising Memorial, and gets everybody pulled into it. First he gets Eloge, and then Marcus is just me. And he goes, General Mark, immediately gets him pulled into it. And it's it's this moment of play that he does. He does it several times throughout the movie. At his highest high points, he brings other people into it and to play with that. But overall, yeah, it's just such a fascinating look at people who are all trying to process something. Eloge is clearly trying to process the trauma or partially process the trauma of his own survival through genocide through the lens of seeing another one. Through the lens of observing another genocide. The genocide that people always talk about. Granted, it's the Holocaust. It is if you're talking about the capital G genocide, the Holocaust is there.
Yeah.
And another thing that I really loved about it that also made me extremely sad was the way Jesse Eisenberg decided to capture is it Lusion?
Lublin was the city. The camp is Majdanek. Majdanek.
We are doing our best with this.
Yeah, I don't know what the Polish
pronunciation. The fact that it is, this is the thing about a lot of the camps that people don't talk about. People talk about Auschwitz and some of the big ones a whole lot. We always hear those get talked about, but these smaller ones do exist, and they are more frequent than you would think. These things existed in a lot of places that you would not think about unless you did a tour like this. It's a small camp. You don't imagine, millions of people being processed through there. But then Jesse Eisenberg does
a small camp 2 miles outside of town.
Yep.
That was basically abandoned in such a hurry that they didn't destroy all the evidence, kind of thing.
Yep.
So it is a intact kind of remnant of that era.
Yeah, it's when you're going through and you see what age has done to the site. Things are old and they're somewhat dilapidated, but you see the scars that are on there. The scars of the chemical gas that was leaked into the concrete that has now bled through after years. You see the shoes of all the people who died. And anybody who's ever well, how did they do it? They show us an incinerator. And we look right down the chute. And then we see like the remnants. I don't know if it's an actual remnants of the people there. I don't imagine it is the giant like pile of ash that's there at the site. It's under like a dome that you look at. I don't know. I can't imagine that would be like. I can't like. I'm having a hard time imagining that like one, wind would not like blow that away all the time. But two, also that people just like let the human remains be there. Not being interred at all is a thing for me. So I don't imagine it's the true people's ashes, but also I don't know.
Yeah.
And it sure strikes a visualization of like, this is the like, if you were to tell me, hey, this giant pile of ash is an approximation of how much ash would have been made from everybody who died and was processed through that horrific camp, I'd believe you.
Yeah, the striking image for me was the cage of shoes stuffed to the brim.
I started tearing up when I saw the cage of shoes. His choice not to have any music here.
Yeah.
I think I've seen any other Holocaust thing I've ever seen has some sort of like quiet, creeping music or something like very much that, giving us raw audio of everybody walking through that camp, like we're on that tour with them, is a bitter truth of this camp and what happened here.
Yeah, especially when the contrast has been, famous numbers by Chopin. Like, so many of the numbers in here, I wouldn't have been able to like pinpoint them as Chopin, but I'm like, oh, I've heard this song before. I've heard this song before.
Keeping everything classic.
Save maybe the Havana Nagila, but all the other Chopin elsewhere was like it's the music is used as such a celebration throughout the rest of the film of like the Polish culture and that region, that its absence is absolutely a deliberate, like, we're not celebrating this moment. This is
you're here
just a look at history and the horrors of that moment in time.
Yeah, it is. I was obsessed with history growing up, especially World War II. If you were to say, Cameron, what were the three things that defined you? There would be three things as like younger in especially your early teenage years. I'd say it's probably what you'd associate with a man in his 50s back then. I was obsessed with World War II. I was super into, I was a like mini neoconservative. And three was, what was I going to say? This was The Ringer too. Gosh, dang it. I'm tired and it's showing. And my favorite show was Law and Order. I was a little old man.
Sure.
Less on the little side. I was always kind of a rotund child. But when it comes to like learning about the Holocaust all the time, but it's moments like this where it's captured on film and in art in it's done tastefully in a way that they are not overemphasizing the horrors of the Holocaust in a way that is sensational on any level. I think of like The Devil's Arithmetic and other films like that truly capture the horror, but it is somewhat sensationalized for the sake of film. This felt like a group of people, we were watching a recording of a group of people walking through a tour. And it is this very much like we were showing you a film, now we're showing you truth. This thing happened. And I feel like, especially with what we've been dealing with the last couple of weeks, especially, and what we've been dealing with the last few years, really, with the rise of, white nationalism and neo-Nazis coming back in full force, getting a stark reminder like through this film was a very pointed message of there is truth to the Holocaust, and we can't it is history and it is the past. But as with Aloysius' character, it's like if we don't learn from it, we don't prevent these things, we will see a rhyme scheme come through.
Yeah, even that there were like the fascinating variety of perspectives on it. The older kind of retired couple kind of being maybe the most touristy of the bunch, of like they're here because this is a fascinating bit of their history, kind of thing. But when Benji freaks out, they're like, what fucking good does that do? Like, yeah, we're up here in first class. Should we just always suffer because, those people suffered, kind of thing?
That's a great, that's such a good commentary on generational guilt too.
Yeah, exactly. That being kind of repeated at the dinner, and the thing that I think really sets Benji off to leave being David talking about when their grandmother said, like, you know, the first generation leaves and does, you know, works whatever menial job they can. The second generation, you know, works to be a doctor, a lawyer, and then the third generation gets high on their, you know, their parents' couch
in the basement.
Yeah, being obviously a direct call out
About Benji.
About Benji, obviously, yeah, and that, like, Benji, who thus far has been presented as, like, he's clearly the one that had the close relationship with the grandmother, and Grandma Dory was his, like, rock and the thing that was maybe keeping him holding on, and to hear that even she kind of looked down on him, in that way, I think definitely breaks something in him in that moment, and yeah, he you know, snaps a bit and lashes out.
I think if you were to tell me, oh, Grandma Dory's the one that taught them piano as kids, that to me would be like he goes to the piano for like a moment of comfort or something like that. I would see that as well. That might be like a cutting room floor thing, or just a thing that I came up with.
But. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, that he's like, he says specifically, like, we took lessons. And I feel like if that had been tied to Grandma Dory,
it would have brought up.
They would have said, yeah, like, Grandma Dory taught
this
us
is also probably because, like, my mom has taught almost every one of the grandkids piano. Mm-hmm. So, like, to me, that's a grandmotherly thing to do.
Yeah. That said, I also, like, I up until this point, I was, like, very cold on David. And so when David has that moment after Benji has left and kind of really, like, breaks down and says, like, I don't know why the fuck he would, you know, try and kill himself with sleeping pills 6 months ago. Like,
and they were like, everyone's like, wait, what?
Dumps that, on the table, and it feeds into kind of the conversation they have later on the rooftop of, you know, going back to what you said of, like, I don't understand how someone with your, like, passion for life would give up so easily. And it is the, like, yeah, it's a hard thing to reconcile when, and I think part of it is so much of what we see in this movie of, like, yeah, they're not close like they were when they were kids. They're living their own lives, and especially by the end, we see that, yeah, they're disconnected. They're, you know, like, David's going to go back to his comfy life, and Benji doesn't have that. Benji, you know, may not have anything with Grandma Dory gone. Like, he may not have a place that he can, you know, crash on her, and is
well, he's also a homebody for sure. You get, or like a hometown kid, because he talks when David starts talking about, like, you would want to come to New York City, and he says, what's wrong with, like, my hometown? Yeah. Like, what's wrong with the hometown? You're not good at, like, what? Like, you're too good. Like, that reaction also spoke to, as somebody who used to take pride in being from Mesa before I traveled for the first time on my own and, like, saw how big and cool the world is. I was all about, like, I'm never going to leave Mesa. But funny enough, I used to swear, you're never going to see me live in Scottsdale.
Fuck you.
Yeah, yep. I got, shows me.
I always, I mean, even I, as somebody who grew up a block away here, always still classify this as, like, South Scottsdale, which is a very different culture than North Scottsdale. The money of, like, Paradise Valley and beyond kind of thing.
Fountain Hills. Like, when I thought of Scottsdale, I thought of things like Fountain Hills or North Scottsdale or anything like that. So for me, on my end of things, it was always like, I never imagined, like, this neighborhood feels very, like, I would say, not Mesa, but Mesa-ish, in that it's, like, it's smaller homes, like real working people live here.
It's very fascinating because, like, one of my best friend growing up lived in Mesa, but before he lived in Mesa, in like the first 10 years of my life, he lived out in Apache Junction. So, like,
that's real rough.
So, like, going out to his house, and I would go spend weekends out there, and we would live out, or, like, they lived in one of those, like, prefab houses just out on the desert, and, like, we would go out and, you know, shoot at bowling pins and stuff.
Not much else to do out in Apache Junction.
So yeah, the, like, when they moved from Apache Junction to Mesa, like, that was an upgrade.
For sure.
And, like, that, I mean, like, his Mesa house and neighborhood didn't feel different than like my Scottsdale house and neighborhood again, because South Scottsdale versus like where he was living in Mesa. So like I thought there was maybe a class difference if I was thinking in those terms in the Apache Junction phase of his life compared to his Mesa phase. But
for anybody who's like, what's wrong with Apache Junction? Let me just put it this way. There are 3 things people love out in Apache Junction: meth, putting their cars on cinder blocks, and more meth.
I mean, you want a stereotype, you go right ahead, Cameron. Apache Junction, yes, not the most affluent of communities, is what I would say, rather than shit on people who live in Apache Junction.
That's fair. They already got enough deal they got to deal with.
Yeah, so
they don't need me shitting on them.
But yeah, that like there were interesting elements there in Benji's like connections to Binghamton.
Yeah.
And like when he and David are talking, like he's like, oh yeah, my buddy's like redoing his house, so I'm probably gonna help him
his
with
roof.
that.
Yeah.
And David's like, okay, well that's his plans. What are your plans? And that's where we kind of really get the like, he doesn't have
plans.
He does like it's. And this is one of those places where I thought of you in that, like,
oh, during my unemployment,
in the unemployment phase, like, had you not had like parents to go back to,
oh yeah,
you know, you like in an alternate universe, you're in the same boat Benji seems to be.
Oh, 100%. This is a real thing. This is a real thing.
And
that a lot of people have to go through too.
Yeah, absolutely. And seemingly, I would think, given what we have to go off of, I think Benji does have family that he could go to, but he's probably just too stubborn to, you know, go on that. I don't get the feeling that like his parents have said, you can't come stay with us if you need to, you know, get some help to get back on your feet. He strikes me as he's too strong-willed and independent, so he's going to get by however he gets by.
Well, it's also very clear. So another thing too is like the bags they bring with them.
Mm-hmm.
Benji's bag is a hiking bag.
Yeah.
That is not uncommon with like people who are like unhoused.
Yeah.
Have them a lot. Because they're great bags.
He's got a phone that has a full voicemail thing, but also can't play music as he kind of describes it. So it's like, okay, so it's probably some sort of like track phone, prepaid bit or something like that. So he's not really.
And it's not that I don't think Benji has money. I think it's just a matter of
there are a couple things where I'm like he's too his beard is too groomed to be like a homeless beard kind of thing. But like there's a degree of like, well, how deep in the weeds are they going to tip that hand?
Well, I think also a matter of like there's a difference between people who are unhoused and people who are like what you think of when you think traditionally of homeless people.
Sure.
There's a lot of people who are unhoused who don't have secure living that are living in their cars and other stuff that have fully functional lives. It's just housing's expensive and difficult. So when I'm thinking of Benji, I'm thinking he probably he doesn't own a car, so he probably just has people that he knows he can say, hey, can I crash on your couch tonight?
Yeah.
Or like he says, stay up in as somebody who has done that before in San Francisco.
I mean, like the whole bit of them like sneaking on the train and stuff, like it's clear that isn't the first time he's been doing that.
Nope. It is a very real thing. And as somebody who spent like a night in San Francisco trying to do that, it's tough. Like not wanting to get caught by security, finding a place to like just hold up for a few hours. Like it's a real thing. I got a peek at what it was like to be like, to be unhoused. It's rough. It's a rough life. It's very stressful and very anxiety driven. And I did that for a night. And that was just like by choice. I could have. That
was to save a couple $100 or something.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
That was that choice that I made. And I was in school. Like I was still in school at the time. So it's like, I understand why I made that choice, but like now it's not the same, especially now that I'm working again. Like that's just not how it goes. But yeah, no, like it's tough, man. It's tough out there for some folks. So as much as I like crapped on people who live in Apache Junction, at least they have homes to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think if I had anything else. There were so many moments. Yeah. I mean, you touched on it a little bit earlier, like striking visuals.
Yes.
That especially I think Jesse Eisenberg has a good use of like a montage, both in the concentration camp sequence, but also when they're kind of like I don't remember who's listing off, like I think it's probably James is like listing off a series of things in terms of like here's like the Polish culture, and we're just seeing images of those things, like,
but it's those things
the last standing, the oldest standing synagogue is like the second story on
of an office
shop kind of thing, or
shop.
here's the the theater or something like that.
Here's this vacant lot that used to have a bakery. Like it's very much of like I'm telling you where things were. The reality is they're not there anymore. Or if they're there, they are built into the infrastructure or culture. It is not the same as it was back in the day. And that's why he said, before we walk in this gate, we go into what's was called the Jewish gate in the Jewish district. I want you to think what it was like back a couple hundred years ago. And to then get to see that through that lens, but we're also seeing it through, so we're hearing James describe it, but getting that stark parallel to where it is now. And it's like, yeah. Shout out also to them being like, hey, yeah, by the way, there's some Soviet architecture that's going to look real difficult to be around. It's like, yeah. It's we get to see a lot of Poland here. Not a lot of Polish culture, but a lot of Poland, like Warsaw and these cities. It's a very fascinating way of like looking at a city without being embedded into its culture through these films that I think was captured very well, especially because the lens we're seeing it through are of tourists. We are seeing it through the lens of people who do not know that culture. And it's its own call out too, when Benji calls out James for like, why don't we ever meet Polish people or talk to Polish people or go do Polish things? It is kind of calling itself out a bit like, hey, this is not a Polish movie. This is not a movie about Poland. It's a movie about these Jewish kids doing this Jewish guys doing this Jewish thing.
Yeah. We're riding first class in the trains. We're staying at these nice hotels. Like, this is not the experience that the people we're reminiscing about had on this, on this trip. This is the glamorous, glorified, like they would wish that they could have this experience in 1,000 years. They'd never get this kind of vibe.
Yeah. So I think it does a great job of paralleling that and capturing it in a great way. So Jesse Eisenberg, just his lighting work, like or whoever he had running cameras, the lighting work on this movie is fantastic. I don't recall ever there being a scene that it felt too dark. I never felt like there was a scene where it was too bright, especially with all these outdoor shots that they're doing. They perfectly captured like an atmosphere of, part of it is also, we're on a tour, so it's bright outside and we're seeing everything. And some stuff feels like it's a little bit washed out, but it doesn't feel wrong that it's washed out. It feels intentional. And there's so many things about the cinematography in this movie that didn't blow me away, but enticed me and captured me in a very unique way. So.
Yeah. Another shot I loved was when the cousins are like walking along a pathway.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the the mural on the side of that path that is like, the world that was or something like that. Just being that struck me as they got to location. We're like, that's just a cool visual. Mm-hmm. Let's do something with that. Similar, and it felt like there were a few of those kinds of things where maybe it was just like, hey, we're gonna set up the camera and we're gonna do a shot. And we're just gonna kind of walk and be silly. Like maybe them also in the little market when Benji buys the hat.
Yep, that was a fun scene. Those scenes were so much fun.
Yeah, the one like the remember the Bushwhackers definitely feels like that's just Kieran Culkin ad-libbing.
Yep,
and they turned it into a thing on they set it up as a shot and threw it into like a little montage of stuff.
Yep.
But it is such a humanizing bit of his character that is that's a real thing that I can look at and see, even though the Bushwhackers are before both of our times kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Also not that popular, just like a fun little take that he did. That was just wouldn't be the first one I go for that era.
The thing I think of when I think of the Bushwhackers is them showing up in Royal Rumble or the what was it, the gimmick battle royale cameo thing where they walk down the thing, they walk into the ring, they get thrown over, and then they walk back out doing that same stupid thing. It's yep, that's the Bushwhacker like memory I have, because otherwise they're wrestler, like a tag team from the 80s that definitely predates any time I was watching.
If you thought about the tag team from the 80s, you think of like the Steiner Brothers, or you think of the Road Warriors or something, like one of the like classic ones that like really permeated pop culture a little bit.
Yeah, like Heart Foundation.
Something like that.
The Mega Powers.
Yeah, you just don't think of the Bushwhackers.
Yeah.
Which is why it's such a great cut.
Like,
it's such a deep cut.
You think of the Bushwhackers if you are a like a mark, a wrestling mark.
Yes.
Like that's
if you're a super mark. You have to be a super mark for that to just respond.
I wouldn't even say super mark. Like because I don't watch a ton kind of thing. I guess it would be wherever you consider me in terms of like markitude, as somebody who like got back into wrestling largely through like list videos and like what culture wrestling and like Simon Miller Ups and Downs, or 10 greatest tag teams from the 80s lists that What Culture and Cultaholic did and stuff like that. Like I got a big old, like, as somebody who watched like late 90s early 2000s and then fell off for a long time, like coming back around WrestleMania 33 and just being like inundated with like video after video of those, like that ended up being a pretty good like history lesson of what I had missed in the years between. And then also a history lesson of like the things that predate, when I was even watching in the first place, predate my Attitude Era kind of stuff. So like even though I've probably never watched a Bushwhackers match, I know the Bushwhackers. I caught the reference, even if he hadn't said the Bushwhackers. I saw him doing this thing, and would have been like, "Is he doing a Bushwhackers reference?"
When he said, what really like tipped me off, he goes, "Yeah, he licked the kid's head," and it like I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Bushwhackers." Okay, yeah. Maybe you don't have to be a super mark to get that reference. Then.
Yeah, it's the like
you got to be an educated mark to get that reference.
Yeah, educated or you like the absurdity of WWF era stuff, like
the Survivor Series where it was the clown Foundation versus whoever else it was.
Yeah, like Jerry Lawler's like Royal Court kind of thing. What was that? That was not Bozo the Clown. Doink the Clown. It was Doink's faction versus Jerry Lawler's faction. Wrestling's weird, man.
Wrestling's so weird.
Anyway, any final thoughts you want to share before we wrap up and dive into the report card?
My final thought is Kieran Culkin deserves all the award buzz he's getting.
Yeah, absolutely nothing against his performance. I just always hate the like games that studios play in their like push of like, well, we're gonna push him as a supporting actor because we think that's going to be like the best shot for, award stuff. Like this year, it seems to very much be like he's being pushed as a supporting actor when he's very clearly a co-lead with Jesse Eisenberg. Zoe Saldana is pushed as a supporting actor when she's arguably the lead of the movie she's been winning stuff for. And it's just like fucking absurd with like, and it's like, like The Bear being pushed as a comedy is probably the biggest egregious affront to that kind of stuff in recent years.
In recent years, but it's also important to like when I look back, I'm like, well, The Bear started off as being much more of like a like dingy work comedy. In the first episode that I was trying to watch, it felt like they were trying to do some comedic stuff. It was like meant to be like these are serious people talking about running a beef sandwich restaurant in Chicago. And then it ends up turning super like I watched the clips and stuff. There's like a compilation to the Joe song of like called Chicago, I think is what it's called. But it is a like beautiful song. But the compilation is like the brutality of the dramatic efforts of that show. So it's even if it started as a comedy, it is not a comedy.
Yeah, and in this case with Kieran Culkin, it's like okay, you're pushing that as a supporting actor,
that guy ain't supporting.
Like. When you are the main character of the movie, arguably, like that as a supporting actor role up against actual supporting actors who are doing much less in their films, of course you're going to get the award because you're a lead actor in this film.
Yeah, it's bull.
But
it's
absolutely,
bull.
I mean, having not seen the other performances that he's usually been nominated up against. I can't actually speak to it, but I fully understand like him being celebrated for this because it is a great performance. Absolutely.
Also a big fan of the circuit they've been going on to promote the movie. Mm-hmm. The Graham Norton one, especially where he mentioned like when he first got introduced to his wife, like how that went and what he said to her. I forgot her name, but her name is something like very like whatever. And she was used to people always being like, oh, that's such a beautiful name. And he was like, that's stupid. But he didn't say stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I've definitely seen some of his interviews as well. Like him, in the stuff with Jesse Eisenberg, like them being in, like, it was interesting because I had seen this interview before seeing the movie. And in the interview, he's very much like, oh yeah, I'm always the guy who shows up at the airport 10 minutes before my flight. And I never have a problem. I always get on and I go. Whereas Jesse Eisenberg's like, yeah, I'm always there like 2 hours early.
Yeah.
Or Kieran Culkin basically being, it was Coleman Domingo, I believe he was doing like the, like actor on actor interview. And he's like, yeah,
that's such a good actor on actor.
I'm the kind of actor who, like, if my call times, or if my car's, showing up at 6, I wake up at 6. And it's like that. And also I think, I don't know if it was in the Graham Norton thing, but it was also in there of like, yeah, I got Mark Ruffalo high on, on a show because I swapped out a prop joint with a real joint one night kind of thing. Like, those are like, all of these things are like, no, fuck you, Karen Culkin.
Yeah.
Those are bad things. You should not be celebrated for any of these things. Like, you're being a dick by not being there and being ready to go when, your car's there to show up. Like, you are delaying the production. You should be there, be ready to go. Like, yeah, get up 15 minutes before your thing, but don't wake up when your car is there to pick you up. Like,
I think he was also being a little exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I don't imagine you get work that consistently. I mean, granted, he's the
fucking incredible. Of course you do.
Yeah,
people bend over backwards for bullshit egos all the time.
That's
if they deliver results.
He just, the thing about it is like, if you
he's an interesting mix of like a lot of things he's saying I love, and a lot of things he's saying I'm like, I would not want to be your friend because you sound like you would be a nightmare to try and be around.
But I think that's kind of like
But he's also like, he's very much like, I don't want to deal with like the thing I loved was like, I don't think we're storytellers. And they like, and like the way it was introduced to me, it's like, I don't think we're storytellers. And it's a cut to like an interview from the day before where Jeremy Strong maybe.
Yeah.
Like also from Succession basically is doing like a pretentious, like, I think we're such storytellers answer. And he's like, I don't think we're storytellers. It drives me crazy when people say we're storytellers. Sorry, Jeremy. We should have cut this, but sorry, I think that's so stupid. We're not storytellers. The camera is the storyteller. The editors are the storyteller. And it's like, that absolutely I love.
Yeah.
And because it is like, taking the legs out of like the uber pretension of like, this thing we're doing is so important and it's really all on us. So it's like, no, it's not, man. Like, you get a bad editor who doesn't like you, you're fucked.
Oh yeah.
I think you are getting edited out of this movie.
I think that's kind of the thing, is that he takes the piss out of pretentiousness.
Yeah.
So when he does these things that you normally would associate with somebody who's pretentious or egotistical, it doesn't come off as that because he's like, I'm not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much self-deprecation that goes along with it that it somehow levels it out.
Yeah, Coleman Domingo being like, this is going to sound weird because I'm older than you, but I grew up on your movies. It's like, yeah, that is weird.
That's weird.
But yeah. Anyway, shout out to Kieran Culkin, Jesse Eisenberg, all of the like awards, like interview circuit stuff they did. They were another fun pairing, much like Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. Like, it was fun seeing their their back and forth and the stories that would come out of kind of their interviews together. And this in particular, like, yeah, I think on the Graham Norton thing, like the idea that Jesse Eisenberg cast Kieran without ever meeting him, without ever having him do it, like, it was very just like, it was vibes. Like, you have the vibes I'm looking for this character. I want to offer you this role. And then but also being like, yeah, and then he's trying to give me notes and I was like, fuck you, man. It's like, no, man, he is the director. That is his job too. Job. Yeah. And it is a weird dynamic, director and scene partner and all this stuff. But yeah, it was like,
also that Kieran turned down the role 3 times, which I understand. He's like, I'm not Jewish. I shouldn't be doing this role. Also, I just finished Succession. I want to be home with my family.
Yeah.
Like, so he goes like, I shouldn't be doing this either because I'm not Jewish. And then on top of that, but then being told 3 times, like, hey, like Jesse's like, hey, I need you for this movie. Right before we're getting ready to shoot. Okay, I'll do the movie. And like the fact that we haven't heard of like, was there an alternate? It's like Jesse Eisenberg bet on Kieran Culkin going to be in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think it really is a call to like, one, Jesse Eisenberg has, like when I see him in interviews and stuff, he's so subdued, but I think especially this movie shows he has such an eye for the work.
Yeah.
Eye for directing, obviously writing chops. This movie's really well done. A tight 90 minutes to get a character journey story out of a tight 90 minutes is difficult, especially with the way that studios let people balloon in the runtime these days. So to keep it a tight 90 and make that work so well,
one of the other trivia things I saw there was maybe a lot more originally, or a lot more shot, certainly, with Jennifer Grey's role. There's a trivia thing that said Jennifer Grey, who is Jewish American, was overwhelmed on visiting Majdanek and couldn't stop crying. Eisenberg initially kept some of her reaction in the film, but ultimately decided it was disrupting the tone. So it seems like there was probably a little bit more of her stuff in there at some point. But as he was paring it down and kind of really focusing on these cousins, that was they took kind of front and center. So all right, well then let's dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give A Real Pain?
I think this is like an A to A+. Like, I think this is a stellar film. I'm so glad that you suggested we do this. I did not expect to see myself in this movie so much, but also to see a truly great, tight, wonderful story that doesn't end on a happily ever after. It does end on a lot of ambiguity, and that alone is a risk to take, and it really could have hurt the film if it was done in a different way, but it didn't. It was done the way that it did it, and it felt right. It felt good.
Yeah, I think it's an A for me as well. I think this being the type of movie it is, the size of the movie, the scale it is, absolutely it can lean into and get away with the hey, this isn't a happy story. There isn't a happily ever after at the end of this.
We visit a Holocaust, a Holocaust museum.
The slap that David gives Benji at the end doesn't suddenly turn Benji around and he's like, yeah, you know what? I do need help. I am going to take up your offer and come live with you or something. No, Ben, that's not how people work. You don't just change overnight just because of a dramatic slap that is reminiscent of a slap that your grandmother gave you.
Also hilarious. That scene's hilarious.
Yeah.
It got such a good laugh out of me. Because he's like, why did you do it? Well, Grandma did. He goes, I was 18. I needed direction in life.
Yeah. And how quickly they're like, it's okay, man, I love you.
Yeah.
And I think the most beautiful moment ends up being the hug that they are giving to each other after that. And
David not
letting go of the hug. Yeah. It is I think that's almost a tacit, David understands that Benji's not in a good place and he's not letting me help him. So I'm going to hold on to him as long as I can here because I don't want to feel guilty about that if 3 months from now I get a call saying he OD'd on pills again or something like that. I want to hold on to this moment as long as I can before going back to the real world. Beautiful, beautiful shots and beautiful moments. A for me as well. Extra credit. Other suggestions if you like this. I don't know if you looked at the other suggestions that come up. This is the wildest bunch I've ever seen. We're in Hulu land now, and man, it is fucking weird. The move, it was such a weird thing, and I'm like, I've heard of only one of these things, I think. So I need to look up what the hell some of these are. One of them, so the first recommendation, 4 Cousins and a Christmas. The synopsis that Disney Plus has, 4 cousins reunite just in time for Christmas, but not without some family drama. A 2021 film with very little in the way of additional details. Looked like it was a very low budget kind of nonsense. But yeah, it was just okay, well, that's weird. The next one, The Worst Person in the World, also known as Verdens Verste Menneske. It was a Norwegian 2021 film that was nominated for Best International Feature Film and Best Original Screenplay that year. Yeah. Joyride, a 2022 coming-of-age Irish film featuring Olivia Colman. Stop and Go, 2 sisters embark on a hilarious mile-a-minute road trip to rescue their grandmother and her beloved dog from her retirement home before their reckless sister gets there first. Also a 2021 film of something or other. Here's where it gets extra crazy. Bad Luck Banging or Loony Porn, a 2021 Romanian film about a teacher who finds her career and reputation under threat after her sex tape is released.
What?
The synopsis on Disney Plus includes cleverly placed graphics cover explicit content.
What?
That's like in the synopsis that they give for the movie. Like,
That's crazy.
It's a 2-sentence synopsis. This here's what really tipped it over for me. That followed up by Miracle on 34th Street.
What?
Miracle on 34th Street, the 1994 holiday classic with Richard Attenborough and Mara Wilson. Just here.
What?
In amongst all this other stuff. Just fucking right there. The only one I knew. Or no, not the only one I knew. I did know one of these other ones. Next up, I'm Totally Fine. A 2022 sci-fi comedy. Vanessa embarks on a solo trip after the death of her best friend Jennifer. However, her self-care plans change when she finds Jennifer standing in her kitchen, claiming to be an extraterrestrial.
What?
Did a little bit of research on that one. Seems like that was very much like came out of COVID and was like inspired by this person's experience during the COVID pandemic and like the isolation that they felt and trying to cope with things. And then lastly, The Good Girl, a 2002 black comedy starring Jennifer Aniston, John C. Reilly, and Jake Gyllenhaal. Mm-hmm. Just like, what in the fuck is this list of movies and where have we gone to in the Hulu landscape of things? Just wild nonsense all over the place. We talked about a little bit, or I highlighted last week in the Skeleton Crew finale that like one of the offerings was like an Italian, 6-episode series that had been made for Disney Plus, and that was a weird thing to see pop up.
Not anymore.
This was 8 of those, or 7 of those, and Miracle on 34th Street, and I was like, "What are we doing? Where are we at?" So anyway. Extracurriculars. You watch anything else on Disney Plus this week?
Yes. Technically, I was watching it on. Technically, I was watching it on Peacock. So no. Yeah. Bakuman, the anime I was trying to watch a couple months ago, where I was like, man, I hate Hulu's subtitles for anime. Turns out Peacock does them right. So I was hopping over there. Granted, it is like a shared library. I don't know why Peacock has better subtitles than whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Weird, okay, but it's fine.
Yeah. I've still been making my way through How I Met Your Mother.
There you go.
I don't know, I think I'm in like season 5 or 6 now or something like that. I'm definitely pushing along. We're past the Stella years. So yeah, just having some more fun there. Oh yeah, like I'm past the like Barney and Robin round 1 relationship, and like I think Robin just started dating the news anchor that she like gets involved with, Dan, I think, maybe the guy who like starts out showing up to work in just his tidy whities, and then it's like, you have a passion for this, I want to have a passion for this because you deserve better. And then like the duck and rabbit episode, I think, is what turns her around kind of thing. But anyway, that's about where I'm at in the How I Met Your Mother rewatch journey. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me here to talk a real pain. We haven't talked about what we're going to do next week, so stay tuned for whatever that's going to be. That'll be a fun surprise. We'll figure something out. You can follow Cam at revcabot.bsky.social. Anything you have a shout out to there, Cam?
I wanted to give a shout out to, Trevor's been putting out Bliss on that nerdy site. I believe the last one I read was your platinum one.
I did get my Lego one
is up.
Week.
Yes. Yep. Came out just yesterday. So, that is just like, if you ever want to just like see Trevor writing about some stuff that he finds fun and he's passionate about, some of these the platinum one and the Lego one, I think, are some really great reads. I haven't read the Lego one yet, but I have no doubt that it's very good.
Yeah, the Lego one's an interesting one, as it always is, because it is the epitome of like my eyes are bigger than my mouth kind of thing. Of like, I only built 4 or 5 of the sets that are in there, but like I bought all of these sets, and so these are like, I ranked the set, my favorite 20 sets from last year. And there's
you bought the Onyx Cinder?
Yeah, nice. I have it out there in the living room.
Nice.
in the vein of the Lego sets, it's a way more than like 20 on the list because a lot of them are like little ties. And it's like, yeah, I have the X Mansion and I threw in the X Jet in there because I didn't want to just turn that into 2 separate entries or something like that. So yeah.
I figured this was going to be your number one. Folks, number one's real good.
Yeah. Number one's a fun one. And yeah, number one's like technically three sets in one, but it's like, here's the real showcase, and this would have been my number one even without these extra little supplemental things. And yeah, I think I start that write up off with like, if you know anything about me, this was of course going to be the number one set this year. So yeah, shout out to the Lego stuff. You follow me at trevorjstarkey.bsky.social. In addition to that, go check out our nerdy site show from this last week where we talked about some of our other favorite things from 2024. Obviously, we kicked off the year with our Game of the Year episode, then our Movie of the Year episode, and then we did our kind of everything else we liked about last year episode. Because those episodes have been so extremely long and we are basically at our data limit for the month on Libsyn, we will not be having a new That Nerdy Site show this coming week. We're going to take the week off so that we can basically come back in February with the fresh monthly upload limit. So yeah, we'll be back to normal things in February. We might do our February episode tends to be like, what are you most anticipating this year? So we might circle back and do one of those. And then, we'll figure out what we're going to do for next week's That D Plus show at some point. So stay tuned. And you follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us, including some of those write-ups. If you like what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Class dismissed.